So you believe in these kind of things?
Let's just say I want to believe.
Even the music gives you goosebumps. Why does this fascinate us so? Well, it does. From Star Wars to Star Trek, The X-Files, even South Park, and the latest Indiana Jones, our culture is obsessed with the idea of aliens, and you could range from just a bit curious to being a fanatic, scouring the skies, hitting the blogosphere. Well, just for you, all this week we're bringing a special series, In Search of Aliens, and for today, UFOs aren't just for Hollywood and science fiction novels, even though you may think that only conspiracy theorists and kooks believe. Both Congressman Dennis Kucinich, for example, as well as former President Jimmy Carter, say that they've seen something in the skies. And our space correspondent Miles O'Brien found some other believable believers as well.
Well, Kieran,
Hi,
you can
Miles.
count me among them. I myself saw a UFO years ago. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Don't know what it was, where it came from. Sure seemed odd. And a lot of otherwise not so odd witnesses can tell you a similar story.
It's one of the better flying airplanes.
Milton Torres is not the kind of guy to tell a tall tale. 20 years in the Air Force, an engineer with a PhD, a professor. He's all about brass tacks and left brain thinking. So I was all ears when he started talking about his UFO encounter over England in May of 1957.
I got scrambled one night, and my first orders are, you will be ordered to fire on this mission.
In just a few minutes, he was over the North Sea in a fighter like this at 31,000 feet, traveling nearly the speed of sound. In the dark and in the clouds, Milton saw the strongest signal he had ever seen on his radar screen.
Bigger than shit, the target was there, and the target looked like an aircraft carrier. It was that big on my screen.
He flew toward it to try and shoot it down.
And it takes off like you're just standing
Like
still.
I wasn't even there. Like I wasn't even there. Just gone.
Milton has no earthly explanation for what he saw.
Could it have been a problem with the radar? Could it have been a weather phenomenon?
No.
Could it have been a meteor? Any of those things?
Everything was explained to me already.
Yeah?
I knew what it was. It was some design of an aircraft by some space alien.
Milton Torres says a U.S. intelligence agent ordered him to keep his mouth shut. The odd encounter is one of hundreds of once classified UFO sightings released last month by the British government. It's the sort of disclosure UFO investigators are demanding from the U.S. government.
How would people react?
Well, it would be kind of good. It's about time.
Former astronaut Edgar Mitchell is the sixth man to walk on the moon and a firm believer that aliens have visited our planet repeatedly. So I had to ask,
Why are they coming in these little glancing visits and we haven't had a more meaningful dialogue or contact or attempt to communicate with these
Well,
people?
I think we have.
Really?
I think we have, but it is not common knowledge.
Mitchell told me after he returned from the moon, he was briefed at the Pentagon by a high-ranking officer, whose name he would not reveal, who said the U.S. government does have evidence of alien spacecraft and is keeping it a secret.
Well, I think the reason it's still a secret is power and control, controlling whatever technology exists.
All of this is fascinating stuff, if it is true. But consider this. There are thousands of sightings of odd, unidentified flying objects reported every year the world over. And yet no one has produced smoking gun proof of any visits from another planet. So isn't it more likely they are some sort of natural phenomenon? Or maybe secret military aircraft? Or just plain old hoaxes? Maybe, but consider this one. March of 1997. A huge V-shaped craft appears to fly over Phoenix. Among the witnesses, then Governor and seasoned pilot Fife Symington.
And I suspect that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
Or consider this one. Before he became president, even Jimmy Carter saw something strange in the sky over Plains, Georgia.
I and about 25 others saw something in the air that changed colors and was round and came and left.
Carter doubts what he saw was an alien craft, but most Americans need no convincing. Maybe it comes from movies like Close Encounters. Or maybe art is imitating extraterrestrial life.
For those who are skeptical of you, what do you say? You say open your mind?
Be skeptical. To be as skeptical as you want, but by all, don't close your mind.
Who knows, maybe we will soon get the full story. Among the people fascinated by the notion of aliens and UFOs, the man in charge of Obama's transition team, John Podesta. In a speech at the National Press Club a few years ago, he said, and we're quoting him now, "It is time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations, of UFOs. It is time to find out what the truth is that's really out there." He said it's not just the right thing to do, Karen. He said it's the law. So we'll see.
All right, tell us about your own UFO sighting. We know that you're a pilot.
It's about 20 years ago. My wife and I were in Maine. It was dusk. We looked up in the sky. We saw a very bright light. Looked like a planet.
Right.
But then it took a 90-degree turn and took off at impossible speeds. What was it? Was it a meteor? Was it a black project airplane? Or was it something else? I don't know.
What were you guys celebrating at the time?
We were completely sober. Completely sober.
No, I mean, there's a lot of people just like you, actually, that say very similar things, which is why, as John Podesta said, let's throw open the books and check it out.
If nothing else, we should see what's in the files.
I told you, I want to see what's over your shoulder, the guy with the triangular face and the big eyes. That's how that would show you. Yes, that would finally do it for me. But meanwhile, it is fascinating, Miles. And tomorrow, actually, we're going to be taking a look at a famous spot in UFO history, of course, Roswell, New Mexico. It's been 61 years since something happened there. Is it still a mystery, or is it case closed for Roswell? Miles is going to be back tomorrow with more here on American Morning. And meanwhile, we're also asking others to send in their videos, maybe their pictures. If you've seen something funny in the sky, or you're convinced that aliens exist, or do you just think it's science fiction, we want to hear from you. Send us any pictures, video at cnn.com/am. You can just go to our website and click on the iReport link. We look forward to tomorrow as well, Miles. Thanks so much.
See you then.
People in American Fork and Highland reported some strange happenings in last night's sky.
They did, and they want to know what was hovering over that area between 7:15 and 7:30 last night. ABC4's Barb Smith is taking action to find out what it was, Barb.
Robert and Karen, they tell us that they saw lights, but those lights were not from an airplane or a helicopter, and these lights dropped something as they hung low over the sky.
I don't believe in extraterrestrials.
Lynette Chittister doesn't believe in close encounters. Neither does Mike Galbraith.
And when people tell me this, I think, oh, you know, you're just seeing things or people are making things up.
But last night, both saw something in the sky that they can't explain. Mike was in the Air Force and says the lights hovering in the sky were unlike any he had seen. He was outside a shopping center in American Fork, grabbed his cell phone, and took this video.
But I looked up and there was 3 red lights, and then they started dropping. It looked like flares or something bright was dropping straight down.
Lynette saw it too at her home in Highland.
And I noticed over the roof of the garage a red light and a white light. And the red light isn't flashing, that like an airplane light does. That's what drew my attention to it.
She says soon there were 3.
And out of the red light comes like a firework, the phosphorescent silver. It's coming down out of it, and I thought, okay, I've never seen that before.
Both say the objects were flying slowly, almost hovering, and were in formation.
And they looked like they were flying in formation perfectly together. And then whatever was dropping looked like it was burning real bright.
The Galbraith says the lights were without sound and did not belong to any plane or helicopter he was familiar with from his military experience. And he says what was being dropped were not flares.
They usually shoot out of the sides or they shoot down, and there's a lot of them. And you could definitely hear them.
Lynette's husband once manufactured military flares. He agreed what was being seen was not a military exercise. But what was it?
The control tower at Provo's Airport had nothing to report out of the unusual last night, nor did the County Sheriff's Department. Salt Lake International's control tower had no incidents, and officials at Camp Williams had nothing to report. So we are reaching out to you. If you have more video or information, go to our website at abc4.com and look for the orange box.
Okay. So why should they believe me if I saw UFOs? I saw them. I know it's the truth.
More people coming forward tonight saying they saw strange lights in the skies of Southwest Florida. They believe they witnessed a UFO and say they've got the video to prove it. Four in Your Corner's Mike Mason is here to share what they saw so you can, of course, decide for yourself.
Well, it all began the night of November 10th. Several people in Cape Coral reported seeing strange lights in the sky, and since then more witnesses have contacted Fox 4, claiming they also saw these UFOs. Tonight, we have new video of these mysterious lights that some say are truly out of this world.
Over there. So many.
Witnesses now claiming they saw strange lights in the skies of Southwest Florida on 2 separate occasions in 2 different locations.
He said, come here, quick, you've got to see this. Bring your camera.
Gwen McDaniels and her husband saw the lights last Friday outside of their Fort Myers home just after dark.
There must have been, I want to say 20, maybe there were 15, but it's a whole slew of them in an absolutely straight line. Okay. And they were gliding, just like this, gliding, just like this, gliding smoothly. And then they turned and went south down 41.
McDaniels grabbed her Android and snapped a couple of photos, but for some reason the pictures didn't come out. But last Wednesday, Stephanie Ramos did capture images of something she calls extraordinary.
Where are the other ones? Are the other ones
Look,
gone?
that's got to be on the news.
My husband and his brother come busting through the door and said there were UFOs outside.
Ramos was visiting her family on Fort Myers Beach, her iPhone recording video of these lights at the southern end of Estero Boulevard.
We just stood on the beach and watched those 3 lights distance themselves farther and farther away and basically just kind of vanish.
The video shows 3 lights in the sky above the housetops in a triangular pattern. Then 1 light disappears and the other 2 seem to float away into the night sky.
Oh my God.
8 members of the Ramos family witnessed the event. Both they and McDaniels are convinced they saw something from out of this world.
So you're a religious woman?
Yes, I am.
So would you swear on the Bible that you actually saw this?
Absolutely. I would swear on the Bible.
Well, there you go. The Ramos family says they asked officials at Southwest Florida International Airport if there were any air traffic recordings of UFOs last Wednesday. They were told they'd have to file a formal report to request the audio transmissions. We'll, of course, follow up on this and let you know what happens. In the studio, Mike Mason, Fox 4 in Your Corner.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a 6th grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Werner von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry. In my first meeting with him, during that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand, this is February. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system, the first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids.
States ambassadors to every country in the world told the leaders of those nations what I'm about to tell you. Last summer, 2 comets were discovered that are on a collision course with Earth. Oh my God.
The Morrises are experts in non-lethal weapons technology. They are consultants to the Defense Department, CIA, NSA, and world-renowned think tanks.
The technology necessary to project three-dimensional images to a point in space requires no new breakthroughs in science. We have the technology now.
I was a corporate manager of Fairchild Industries in 1974 through 77. I met the late Dr. Werner von Braun in early 74. At that time, von Braun was dying of cancer, but he assured me that he would live a few more years in order to tell me about the game that was being played, that game being the effort to weaponize space, to control the Earth from space and space itself. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in 74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over, during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late.
(1957).
I got scrambled one night, and my first orders are, you will be ordered to fire on this mission.
In just a few minutes, he was over the North Sea in a fighter like this at 31,000 feet, traveling nearly the speed of sound. In the dark and in the clouds, Milton saw the strongest signal he had ever seen on his radar screen.
Bigger than shit, the target was there. And the target looked like an aircraft carrier. It was that big on my screen.
He flew
later. Don't know what it was, where it came from. Sure seemed odd. And a lot of otherwise not so odd witnesses can tell you a similar story.
It's one of the better flying airplanes.
Milton Torres is not the kind of guy to tell a tall tale. 20 years in the Air Force, an engineer with a PhD, a professor. He's all about brass tacks and left brain thinking. So I was all ears when he started talking about his UFO encounter over England in May of...
Hitting the blogosphere. Well, just for you, all this week we're bringing a special series, In Search of Aliens. And for today, UFOs aren't just for Hollywood and science fiction novels, even though you may think that only conspiracy theorists and kooks believe Both Congressman Dennis Kucinich, for example, as well as former President Jimmy Carter, say that they've seen something in the skies. And our space correspondent Miles O'Brien found some other believable believers as well.
Well, Kieran,
Hi,
you can
Miles.
count me among them. I myself saw a UFO years ago. I'll tell you a little bit more about that.
It to try and shoot it down. And it takes off like you're just standing
still.
still.
I wasn't even there. Like I wasn't even there. Just gone.
Milton has no earthly explanation for what he saw. Could it have been a problem with the radar? Could it have been a weather phenomenon?
No.
Could it have been a meteor? Any of those things?
Everything was explained to me already.
Yeah?
I knew what it was. It was some design of an aircraft by some space alien.
Milton Torres says a U.S. intelligence agent ordered him to keep his mouth shut. The odd encounter.
So you believe in these kind of things? Let's just say I want to believe.
Even the music gives you goosebumps. Why does this fascinate us so? Well, it does. From Star Wars to Star Trek, The X-Files, even South Park, and the latest Indiana Jones, our culture is obsessed with the idea of aliens. And you could range from just a bit curious to being a fanatic, scouring the skies.